Let's kick it.
Hi, Mike Domitrz here, talking about Can I Kiss You, sexual respect, harassment, assault, kicking it with Doree.
Welcome to the Kicking It with Doree show. I am your host, Doree Allen Nieves, and today my guest is none other than Mike Domitrz. Mike Domitrz is known for the impact his programs, trainings, and publications have made across the world for parents, teenagers, families, educational institutions, the U.S. military, and the media. Today, Mike is one of the leading experts for transforming our sexual culture to one being built on consent and respect, discussing sexual decision-making, asking first, healthy relationships, bystander intervention, and supporting survivors of sexual assault. As the brother of a rape survivor, Mike's mission is personal. So I'd like to welcome you to the show, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great, Doree. Thanks for having me on.
I am really happy to talk to you about this subject, not just because it seems to be like a hot button issue at this point in time, but just because it's something that is really evergreen. It's something that we always need to be aware of, whether we are parents, students, when we're talking about our coworkers, male or female. We have to be assertive and aware and understand that building a culture of consent and respect should be what's the norm. Unfortunately, it's not. The culture of America says that, we have a certain number of inches, that we stand away from each other when we're talking to each other, if we don't know each other personally and things like that. But sometimes people just feel like they can invade your space or they can just say anything or do anything, and that your, personal human rights and boundaries are null and void.
And it's taught at a very young age. And it's not just here in the United States, it's a worldwide issue. I'll give you a quick example. Parents will say to their children, your body is your body and nobody should ever touch that without your permission. And then the parent will turn around to that child and say, now go give grandma a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to give grandma a kiss. Well, that's what you do. You give grandma a kiss. Grandma loves you. And from a very early age, children subtly are taught, if someone loves you, you give them intimacy. You owe them that. Now, that's not sexual intimacy. That's loving intimacy, but it's still a forced form of intimacy that's not healthy. It's not, and it's taught at a very young age. And so it's so subtly built in. It's not even a matter of knowing that I have boundaries or knowing that it's okay for me to say, I don't want you to do that. There's no concept of that from a very young age.
That's right. I have been very, very aware and cognizant of that, and especially with people that my child feels unfamiliar with. When she's a teenager now, but when she was a kid, if she was a baby, if she didn't want to go to somebody, I did not make her go to them. I don't care who they were. And like the example that you gave, grandma, she's probably not a bad person or anything, but still, you still don't want to do that. You don't want to start that pattern. So I agree.
Absolutely.
One of your websites is called Date Safe. And Date Safe, of course, talks about safe dating. It talks about avoiding sexual assault and, being aware of yourself, being aware of your surroundings. And it helps women and females, because you go to the schools too, to be able to assert themselves and understand what to do in certain types of common situations, because unfortunately, the things that you talk about are all too common and they're not always discussed. Sometimes there's an understanding, maybe because of a situation like what you described, where, I'm taught that this is a certain thing. This is a rites of passage. This is my coming of age. This is what's supposed to happen. And not necessarily, you don't have to have sex with somebody, and lose your virginity by a certain age or after prom or whatever. You don't have to do anything that goes against your values.
That's right, or what you want in that exact moment or time. And you're right. Here at the Date Safe Project, we really focus on working with all genders, all sexual orientations, all gender expressions and identities, because everybody needs to be a part of this conversation. The problem with our society is we teach from a young age either what not to do or what not to get. So when you think of sexual education in our country, it's either abstinence, which is what not to do, which can be a wonderful, wonderful choice, or it tends to be condom, which is what not to get, disease, infection, pregnancy. The problem with those two approaches is when they choose to be sexually active, they're never learning what to do where's my skill set on what I'm supposed to do? I'm being taught what not to do, what not to get. But I'm not being, for instance, I might be being taught how to use a condom, but not how to talk to my partner about what we actually want to do with each other sexually.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense. So we give people no skills from a young age on how to engage in sexual activity with words, with knowing boundaries and what you like, what you don't like. And so as you become older, this becomes even more difficult. I meet people that come to our live show in the military and others who've been married 30 years. They walk out and they go, oh my gosh, before today, I never realized that it's okay to say yes or no, that I can say yes or no without guilt.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, a woman may come up to me, and particularly we hear this more from women who say, if I said no, I felt guilty for not pleasing my partner. And if I said yes, I felt guilty for being sexual, for being sort of, our country says, if you're a woman and you're sexual, you're slutty. These horrible labels that have been attached. So freeing people of that and knowing, no, you have the right to say yes or no. You always have the right to have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that, at this point in time, we're recording in October 2017, but why do you think at this point there's such a huge blow up and outrage over, certain celebrities that are kind of being, caught on tape, caught on audio talking about overstepping their boundaries with celebrities? Why do you think that there's so much outrage with it? Because to me, unfortunately, it's not surprising. It's not like, oh, wow, women are being harassed in Hollywood. Oh, you know what I mean? But then
it's not, that's right. It's not surprising. And so what happens is, why do we see the outrage? Well, the reason why was because what people consider a credible source in this case, it was a major publication in the country, did this investigative reporting that found this major powerhouse player in Hollywood. And it was so in depth that no one could in any way reject the reality of what the report found. Mm-hmm. So you got highly credibility. That's different than if a single person comes out and says, this happened to me, and people go, this is the horrible part of our culture. People go, well, I mean, what are the odds that really happened? Why would that person need to do that? He's so powerful. They discredit the individual. Because this was a report, an investigative report that had so much detail, and people are like, this is so overwhelming, we can't deny it. And that's pathetic that in the past, when survivors have come forward, it took 14 coming forward before our country said, oh, maybe there's something to this. That's ridiculous. Why didn't survivor 1, 2, and 3 count? Why didn't they matter? That's part of the problem. Part of the problem with the outrage right now is that we weren't outraged 10 years ago, that we weren't outraged 20 years ago, because this has been happening for thousands of years.
Oh, yes.
That we only listen when certain people say things. That's part of this problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was watching... I guess it was Good Morning America the other day, and I actually wasn't watching in the morning. I recorded it like I do everything, and there was a particular actress on there that was speaking out about this case, and I'm sitting there with my husband watching it, and I was really surprised. We almost got into it because I'm listening to her interview and everything, and I'm listening to everything she's saying, and I'm taking everything she's saying word for word. I'm one of those people that is like understanding of this issue, I guess, a little bit more. And my husband was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. How come she's coming out now? Why didn't she say something 20 years ago? And it's the same kind of thing that when the whole thing with Bill Cosby came out last year, people were saying that about those victims. And so why do you think it is that in our culture, we still have people that are just like indignant or look down upon people like, oh, well, why are they saying something now? Because as you just stated a moment ago, a lot of people are not believed. The first, second, third person that speaks up is not believed or is ignored or is discounted.
The pushback. Yeah, and there's a couple reasons for it. One is that if people don't push back, that means, let's say you're listening to that and you go, oh, this is happening. Then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and go, could this happen to me? Could I be committing this? If I push back and go, that's ridiculous. If that really happened, they would have came out 30 years ago. Then you can act like this isn't happening. So I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to look in the mirror. I don't have to think about, could I do this to someone else? I can live in this fantasy world where that doesn't happen. So that's one part of pushback. The second part of pushback, this idea of why didn't they come forward? Because people want to believe that they will always do the exact thing they believe they would do in every moment because that makes them feel safer in this world. When reality says that under fear and under abuse of power, you don't know what you're going to do. Even if you think you do, you don't until you're in that situation. Why is somebody coming forward 30 years later? It's because this power that this person had was so damaging and so harmful that the fear was, if I come forward, not only will people not believe me, but I won't be able to work again. And this person has that power. Like, they're going to do this to me. So they're going to harm me twice.
Yeah.
So why would I put myself through that? That's a common feeling that survivors can have. What happens is that when a survivor does come forward, and now multiple come forward, other survivors start to realize and feel, not realize, but feel, maybe this is safe for me to come forward. Maybe it's safe because others have come forward and now they're believing, so I can feel safe for the first time. The silly, ridiculous, and harmful part of this is for us to look at survivors and blame them in any way for their actions after the crime was done upon them. When we should be saying, oh my gosh, how did this person do this for 30 years? The focus should be on the perpetrator, the assailant, saying 30 years of doing this to other human beings, not on the survivor. Why didn't they say something? No, this person did this for 30 years. That is unbelievable harm and damage to other human beings.
Absolutely. I wish it wasn't that way, but you're absolutely right. And we're going to see this particular case continue to be played out, as I'm sure others. But we also want to talk about these types of topics as they pertain to young people, who have, as you know, the power to change the future, the generation that is, growing up right now, the teenagers that are living right now, the kids that are being born right now. You have a book and a program called Can I Kiss You?
Yeah, so both the book and the program, what we do is we give people the skill sets to create a culture of consent and respect for themselves, for their peers, for their loved ones, if they're parents or educators with other teenagers, giving them the actual skills. So instead of focusing on let's raise awareness that this is happening, no, let's notice how it's happening in our own personal lives and how we can transform our culture, our decisions, our choices, so that's not happening to others around us, to those we love, to those we care about. And I mean literally looking in the mirror and going, all right, how do I seek consent and sexual intimacy? How am I living a culture of consent and respect? And getting the skill sets to be able to do that. So for instance, I know people that could be listening right now going married and geez, I've never asked for a kiss. But yet if I ask that same person, when your child is old enough to engage in sexual intimacy, do you want them to always have a choice before somebody does something with their body? The parent will always say, well, of course I do. Okay, so how have you taught them to do that? And you hear them pause. They're stuck. Are you living that in your own life? So before you engage in sexual intimacy with your partner, do you say, honey, would you love to have sex tonight? Or may I kiss you right now? Well, no, I mean, we're married. So do you want your kids to believe that once you're married, you no longer need to respect your partner so much that you would give them a choice? Like, well, of course not. Of course I deserve to have a choice. Just because I'm married, I don't give up choice. Well, then how are you living that? How are you role modeling that? Those are all pivotally important questions. The book and the program Can I Kiss You, the live program, we teach whether adults or teenagers or preteens how to be able to speak about what you want, what you don't want, so you can declare your boundaries. So that if you're an adult, you can have healthier sexual intimacy that's more passionate, more romantic, because it's mutual. We also teach you how to step in when you see something unhealthy happening, how to set boundaries for yourself, how to be a loving parent or a loved one if this ever happens to someone. So it really goes from healthy intimacy to when something bad happens, how are you there for someone? How are you present there for the survivor?
Yeah, that's key. That's really, really key. And when we look at those social norms that we just assume without really thinking about that perspective of the other person, the child, whomever, that's where we really run into trouble, because we don't all have that same perspective. And we're obviously, me and you, we grew up in a different time. Even though this stuff was going on back then, the kids now are growing up in a time where a lot more is out in the open and is in your face. And there's a lot more sexualization. There's a lot more going on reality shows. And I remember when I was coming up, it was a big deal. There was, I think, a episode of Roseanne or something where the dad said the S word on TV, and it was like a huge deal. There's all kinds of stuff going on TV, not even cable, that is allowed now. It's in our face. And so it's really important for people to be able to know that they have a voice and a choice, and that respect should be the minimum baseline, regardless of whether, you like someone or what the situation is.
Well, I'll give you an example. You'll say to parents, do you hope that when your child's old enough, or for yourself in a relationship, do you believe that when people engage in sexual intimacy, it should be wonderfully, mutually amazing sexual intimacy? People say, well, of course it should be. Okay, where are you teaching the skill sets? Where are you learning the skill sets for that to be true? All of people have been married who have never asked a partner, what would you love for me to do in bed for you tonight? What do you wish I didn't do that I currently do? They've never had these conversations, but they tell me we have the most amazing relationship. Well, how do you know? You're never checking in. So because you don't get complaints, you think you have an amazing relationship, which is all assumption, arrogance. And one thing you have to understand, that everyone has to understand when it comes to sexual violence, is it lives off power. So if I assume what you want and I just do that to you, that's not a miscommunication. That's my arrogance, assuming what you want. That's a power play and just doing that. If you've been married with someone for 20 years and they just do what they do and they don't ask you and they don't give you choices, that is a massive power play over and over again of sexual violence. You deserve to have a choice. So we've got to be able to use our words and teach that skill set.
Yes. I like that. Use your words. And you have to be confident enough and assertive enough to use your words, because a lot of people think, like you said a little while ago, that they can't speak up, that if they do speak up, there'll be, consequences, they'll be blackballed, they won't be believed, and then they have to suffer twice. And I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. This is not something new.
No, and what people don't realize, so I got involved with this work because I'm the brother of a survivor. I was 19 years old when my sister was sexually assaulted. And people do not realize the concept, the understanding of re-victimization, re-traumatizing. So it's one thing to go through a horrific traumatic life experience like a crime, like sexual violence. To experience that in your life is one thing. To have to then go forward and repeat it and share it again can be re-traumatizing, re-victimizing, depending on the atmosphere in which you share it, or who's listening, or who's supporting you. It can be very difficult and even potentially harmful. So the idea that I'm going to go in front of the world and tell the world what this person did to me, when I may believe no one's going to believe me, the survivor could be, for self-protection, thinking, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be more harmful for me. I'm going to make the choice, the safer choice for my mental health, for everything about me, because this could be 10 times worse. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be 10 times worse. This can be a thought process that goes through the survivor's mind that can lead to a survivor not wanting to come forward. And most people hear that and logically can say, well, that actually makes sense. So instead of, when you hear about somebody in a case where they're the survivor of sexual violence, instead of saying, you have to speak up, what we should be saying is, thank you for sharing with me that happened to you. You are strong. You are courageous. What can I do to be of support to you? And then listen and share with them their local resources for sexual assault crisis centers, domestic violence crisis centers, where they can talk with a professional that can support them properly.
Yeah, that's really good. And all of these really key points are going to be highlighted in the show notes for this episode. What is the man's role in all of this? I mean, I'm really, really happy that you have, set up a whole organization around this, and you as a man are taking a stand. You are the brother of a survivor, as you said, and you're going all over the country, all over the world, teaching people about dating safe and asserting your boundaries and talking to your kids. What is the role of men where this whole #MeToo comes in? Women can share with each other what has happened to them and things like that, even or men. But what is the man's role in it? Because most of the people that we're talking about right now that are the offenders are male offenders, even though we do know that there are female offenders. what is the man's role in American society in this whole thing with sexual harassment?
Well, we have to be talking to all people. That's the key thing. This is a human issue. And people like to say, well, it's happening to women and therefore it's a women's issue, which makes no sense. If the perpetrator, as you were bringing up, the majority of perpetrators are men, that doesn't make sense. And people go, well, it's a men's issue, but then you leave out people that can be perpetrating who are not men, there's so many, it's a human issue. So what we have to ask is, how are we teaching people to engage in this world without putting them into gender roles? That's part of the problem here, is that gender roles give people assumption of arrogance of what I get to do or don't get to do because of my gender, which is harmful in a multitude of different ways. So what I'll ask parents is, you hear people say all the time, I want to raise a good young man, or I want to raise a good young woman. And I'll always pause and go, well, how about just a good person? Mm-hmm. See, when you attach that it has to be a good specific gender, then it seems like you're about to raise them based on gender instead of being on a good human being. So if you raise all of your children to be good human beings, give everyone a choice. Here's what it means to be respectful and romantic, not one or the other. Then you're raising a completely different culture. Now we're transformed. Now gender roles don't say one person makes the move and the other one's more passive, which is incredibly unhealthy. Right? Because it leaves one without power and the other one with all the power. You remove all that. You say, no, any human being deserves a choice. So if somebody wants to be sexual with you, you deserve to have a choice. If you want to be sexual with another person, you deserve to have a choice. Because we can hear the harm done on so many different levels from all sexual orientations, gender expressions, because of gender roles. And some people are flipping the script and doing harm the opposite way of the gender role. So I'll give you an example. We were speaking at a military installation and we got done and a woman came up to me. She goes, Mike, I have to admit, I'm the guilty party here in this following concept that I just assume my husband always wants it. And so I just do what I'm going to do. And I can tell sometimes he's really not in the mood, and so I tell myself, well, he's just a man. He's going to want this. And she's like, that is messed up. That is really messed up that I would do that. Just I would never want him to do that to me. And so we have to teach all human beings. Now, I can give you millions more examples of men coming up going, I am the person you were talking about. I don't want to be that person. So I don't want to make in any way someone listening thinking, oh, is he thinking women do this more? No. Our culture has taught men to do this. So we need to take away those teachings and come up with new teachings that are gender neutral, that say, here's the right thing to do as a human being.
Absolutely. Because, the first thing that comes to mind as you bring this up is boys will be boys. Like you're excusing.
It drives me nuts. That concept. How about people will be people, right? How about that's just a ridiculous concept, boys. And you ask people, what does that mean? Well, they're going to be more physical. That's fine. Let's say you believe that the boys are more visual or more physical. That's fine. It doesn't give them the right to impede on other people's boundaries, though.
Right.
So you're a physical person. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to deny your right to be physical or more visual, but that doesn't mean you have the right to do harm onto others because of that. People go, well, Mike, what about our animalistic instincts? That's why we have a brain to make good choices with those animals
and laws.
That's correct. We have this because we know that we don't live on instinct. So when people go, well, it's human instinct, and we know there's a lot of human instinct that can be negative and harmful, that we do create boundaries and guidelines to protect ourselves from.
Yeah, we have brains. We can use self-control. We know right from wrong. Yeah,
that's right.
It's just crazy, but I love that about, just raise your kids to be really great human beings. That is so awesome. I love that.
It's one of those things that parents really need. We'll ask parents, are you teaching your sons and your daughters differently? If so, just imagine the world you've created because of that. You got to be honest with yourself. I just taught my daughter this lesson and taught my son this one. They're different. Okay, so now I've set gender roles for my children for the rest of their lives.
Why? Yeah.
Why?
I've seen another saying that I've heard a lot or seen is moms will raise their daughters and love their sons. So it's implying that, we're going to teach our daughters to be strong, independent women, and to, you can get anything you want in life if you just work hard. But as far as our boys are concerned, it implies that, oh, okay, well, with our sons, no matter what they do, we're going to protect them. They're good. And, I don't know if that's just like a mom thing or a women's thing or whatever, but that's another saying that, again, puts the genders and makes gender roles the highlight. And
well, I'll give you one. A happy wife is a happy
life.
life. Now you go, what's the harm in that? Tremendous harm. What does it imply in that house? That who is the emotional one that we just better keep happy?
Yes.
It implies that that's women and that's mom, and that dad, he never is that way. Dads aren't emotional. Dads don't cause chaos. All right. Well, you know what? Mom might be really emotional because of the chaos dad created. That might be possible. It also implies heteronormative language. They imply there, without saying it, that the other person there's a husband. And so this is how relationships work. Male, husband, wife, keep happy wife, life will be good. All right. It's just so unhealthy. Instead of saying, hey, how are you making sure that you're happy, that your loved ones, that you're creating a happy home for everyone, and maybe not even happy, but healthy, because they're not always going to be happy.
Right.
Is it a healthy home? Is it a safe place to be? Those are better questions.
A lot of what you're talking about today is challenging us to think about things in a different way and to not accept stereotypes that we have grown up with or become accustomed to in our society. And you host a show called the Everyday Mindfulness Show, where you get into everything from meditation, spirituality, to personal passions, to success and failure, relationships, and all of that. So how do you play out this particular topic that we are in today, relating that with mindfulness?
Oh, I love this question, Derry. Thanks. Because they are completely incorporated with each other. It's a full integration. Here's what I mean by that. Somebody was just being interviewed earlier today by someone, and he brought up, he had read the book Can I Kiss You? And he goes, Mike, I know that you have this Everyday Mindfulness Show podcast, and people wouldn't think that of the Date Safe Project guy. But he goes, when you read your book, it's all about mindfulness without ever saying the word. How you treat yourself. How do you treat others? How are you being present in relationships? This is all integrated with mindfulness. So one of the reasons that I love the Everyday Mindfulness Show is it allowed us to take the mindfulness we do in my work and apply it to our lives, right? So one episode is us talking about politics. Another one's talking about nudity and how you feel being nude. I mean, it's just so, we go all over the place, and every week's a new episode exploring how do you live mindfulness with each of these separate topics and components of our life.
And it's a word that, it's almost like a buzzword right now, but mindfulness can be incorporated into just about any situation that you encounter, just having that open mind, having a perspective that thinks about not just what's happening right in the moment, but also incorporating that into the other people around you, not being selfish. I really like it. And I literally just thought of that question right before I asked it. So,
well, I love it because mindfulness does play into being. Here's what people ask me all the time. Hey, Mike, you travel the world doing this work. What books are you reading? And they always think I'm going to name books around gender, around sexual violence. They think that's going to be like the top of my reading list. Not that I wouldn't read them or don't read them, but they think that's going to be the top of my list. The top of my list are books that help me be a better human being. And the reason why is the better I can make myself as a human being. And that means I have a long ways to go. The better I can make myself, though, the better I can be an educator, the better I can be on stage, the better I can be giving to the rest of the world. So that's where I focus on. And Everyday Mindfulness, the podcast that we host every week, it allows us to have that conversation every week. I always say, if no one ever listened, that's fine, because I am growing from every episode in engaging in these conversations with hearing from others.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And I've learned a lot from you today, just going back and forth and thinking about certain things, because I have a certain thing that I'm thinking about when we go into the interview. And then as we talk, I'm like, yeah, and you bring a perspective and I bring a perspective. And, if you're listening, we would love to know what you think about this episode. So you can always leave a comment on the website, which is kickingitwithDoree.com, or you can go to Mike's website, or you can go on social media. Let's talk about how we can reach you, Mike, so that if people want to get in touch with you, book you to speak, engage more in this conversation, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So they can get the book, Can I Kiss You? And the instructor's guide on our website at datesafeproject.org. We have an entire instructor's guide. So if they work with a faith-based group or a school and they want to share that in their community, we have that. We also have the program that you mentioned that we do live, where they bring me in and I'm a keynote speaker, and I'll speak at conferences or schools or events to students who are teaching these skill sets. We do that all over the world. They can also get us at datesafeproject.org, or they can call us 800-329-9390. Now, if they're sitting there going, hey, what about that podcast? You can get that on iTunes, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Just look up Everyday Mindfulness Show. Everyday Mindfulness Show, they can find it, and they can listen to me talking with either a one-on-one or a cast of people every week. For social media, they can find, if they go to our website at datesafeproject.org, right on the main page, either the top or the bottom, they'll find all the social media logos and links. But we'll give them real quick. Most of them are at DateSafeProject. So youtube.com/DateSafeProject, Twitter at DateSafeProject. So it's nice and easy. Facebook's the exception. It's just DateSafe, Facebook.com/DateSafe. And we'd love to have them on there and engaging with us.
Great. I will link to all of those from my site as well. So datesafeproject.org, kickingitwithdoree.com. We would love to hear what you think about all of this. And Mike, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Mike Domitrz, everybody, and looking forward to more from you and just following you and seeing all the great work you're doing. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks, Doree, for having me on. A great conversation.
Thank you for listening and for kicking it with me. Please subscribe and leave a rating or review for this show and episode. Kicking It with Doree is brought to you by DAREE. That stands for Delivering a Rich, Empowering Experience. Connect, interact, and talk about this episode with me on Facebook or Twitter /Doree Allen.